Anyway, France. Let's talk about Ferrari. As our esteemed friend Vincenzo Landino would say, Ferrari. Ferrari. I bet Vinny is not happy, bruv. Where do we start? I mean, guys, let's start with Charles, right? I saw a space after the race which said the title was "Even a champion in the making is allowed to make mistakes." Discuss.
That's just a joker. Tandy, you want this one first? You got dibs, Tandy.
What's the race that we watched?
France. Paul Ricard.
I thought we were watching how to get rid of a guy in 10 days.
Oh my
yeah, shit.
gosh.
My bad. Like I was switching between. I was a bit confused. I said, "When's Matthew McConaughey get rid?"
Oh.
Well, what are we doing to him? Charles' scream is my alarm for this week. I need to wake up, and so does the team. At one point,
Mocking.
It was the deep breathing as well.
Guys, okay. It was the okay. It was the scream, and then it was the it was like the telling signs to pit, like they weren't even watching. They're like,
yeah.
Could you pit now?
Madness.
It was crazy. That team is crazy, top to bottom.
Sorry, repeat the name of the space.
Oh,
the name of the space was Charles Leclerc. Even a champion in making is allowed to make mistakes. Cameron,
that is the next level. That is the next level of unaccountability I've ever had in my life. You know, when you convince yourself that you've done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
I wish I was that naive.
But Tandy, that's not what he's doing, to be fair. Not Charlotte.
No, not Charlotte himself.
No, whoever made the space.
Right. Okay, so there are two prongs of argument that we want to pin down here. The first being Ferrari. Ferrari are manifesting unconscious incompetence. They don't even know they're bad. And if you need any more evidence of that, you only want to look at Binotto coming out and proclaiming that they had a good performance that race. What are you watching, Binotto? What are you on? You're not watching Paul Ricard, because if you watch that race, there's no way that he had a good performance. It was a litany of errors. Charles Leclerc's driver errors, strategy, the grid place penalty that Carlos Sainz had to take, the dodgy, unsafe release in the pit stops. Do I need to go on? How is that a good performance for Ferrari? You're ramping. And then if I talk to Charles Leclerc very quickly, to your point, Nasha, one mistake by itself is fine, right? Experts absolutely make mistakes in isolation. You have a problem, though, and a pattern of behavior when we're talking about Baku qualifying in 2019, 2020 crash, Vettel in Austria, 2020 Italy pushing after the pit stop, Turkey, Bahrain, Monaco qualifying 2021, spinning off in Imola, and now this in France. What are we doing, Nasha and Tandy? This is becoming a pattern of behavior. One off, calm.
The bozo gene. Right. Let me explain the bozo gene. I don't think I came up with the bozo gene, but we've got a larger platform, so I think people have attributed it towards me.
Oh, at least we're admitting that we robbed it. Bloody hell.
Oh, yeah, look, I robbed the outro from Cameron, I robbed the intro from Chigga, and I robbed the bozo gene. So, like, a bozo gene is an inherent flaw. He is born with it. Inside his DNA, in his chromosomes, there's whatever there is in your chromosomes, and then there's like a little bozo gene, just 24th thing there, where he's like, he is just going to short circuit at any moment. Someone said the other day on Twitter that Charles Leclerc, nothing goes on in his pretty little head other than like vroom vroom, his girlfriend, and that's it. And you know when there's like little, you know in cartoon when they get hit on the head and then little birds just fly around the head. Like, that's all.
I'm gonna have to come to his defense, Nasha.
No,
I have to play devil's advocate.
Let me land.
Go on.
And then all I'm saying is, Charles, I love Charles Leclerc. I've always picked up Charles Leclerc. I think he is the future. But unfortunately, when you can go back through the archives. So for me, when he's like Max Verstappen was able to go through these little bozo moments when he wasn't in a title race, right? And Charles before was not in a title race. So the bozo stuff was kind of punctuated by the fact that he would also pull out incredible drives, and he's third on Ferrari's all-time pole position. So his one lap pace is incredible. He can, under pressure, he can pull it out, but he needs to find the limit of his driving and stick to that. But he's always pushing the limit, and you can't do quali laps every lap.
Truth.
And you have to, and this is where, you know, Lewis has had these moments as well, right? We can't act like Lewis has just come in and been flawless his whole career. Max had these moments as well. Look, at the beginning of 2018, Max had 5 races in a row where he had a driver error incident, right? Mm-hmm. But you would say now, terrorism aside last year, that you don't see Max just punt it off, right? I think I remember Turkey 2020. I can remember Saudi Arabia last year in qualifying, and that is about it, right? If we're talking about the same time period we're talking about for Charles, those are the Max Verstappen unforced areas we're talking about. And if he's going against Verstappen, and in the future when Lewis is back, he's going against Lewis, like he said, he's dropped 32 points this season of his own accord, let alone his bozo team, which we'll get to. But he's dropped 32 points this season of his own accord. He's 60 something points behind. Like you said, if he loses the title by 32 points, he will know that it's his own bloody fault. And for me, if you can't see the big picture of an F1 World Championship and not make these mistakes, then you don't deserve to be champion right now. He's not ready. He's not ready.
I definitely agree with both years in the sense that we have a driver whose team is just not on the same path. They're not even on the same train. They're not on the same bus. They're nowhere near each other. You'd think they honestly have met. Every time they link up for a race, you'd think this is the first time they've met since the last race.
Madness.
It's crazy. But at the same time, this also made me question how much people were getting away with before Mercedes had its small glitch and downfall. A lot of people are allowed to hide the fact that even though they're a top 5 driver and they're in a top 5 car, they aren't actually as good as top 5 status in Formula One.
Wow.
And while you think Charles could have had some sort of practice in the midst of Ferrari's rise, and it just seems like he didn't get enough practice. And so I agree with Nyasha in the sense that he's definitely not ready for a world championship. And I definitely think Ferrari still need to go back to the drawing board, establish who the fuck they are, what they do, and how they do it, and how they can do it well. But I think there are so many drivers on that top 5 status per se. It doesn't matter who your top 5 is. There's probably the same few as others who you can say are only top 5s because they've A, got a fast car, and B, they were allowed to hide behind certain people's victories that hid their awful little mistakes.
Wow.
Whew.
Not wrong.
Man.
Not wrong.
My internet chose a great time to come back in. Oh my God. That's incredible.
So dandy.
No, I don't.
Yeah?
No, you're fucking on the nose, on the money, you know, light. the light this season
On the black stuff. Woo!
You can't do it.
Yeah. Like this season, I think more than others, we're because of the new cars and the new regulations, we really are seeing the light being shone brightly on certain men, and certain men are doing well in that light, and certain men are wilting under that pressure, and that is teams and that is drivers. Okay, now all I'm saying is this, right? Ferrari have been shambolic for years. Let's talk about this shit. Mercedes have been shambolic for 6 months. Not even that. 4 months now, right? And all hell was broken loose. Ferrari have been shambolic since even in the Alonso days, they were shambolic. In the Vettel days, one of the big excuses that Candyman fans say about Vettel at Ferrari was that he was having to be everything in that team and do it from the cockpit. He was having to do strategy from the cockpit. He was having to motivate. He was having to do all the things. And under that pressure, he wilted. Now, I know one driver who's doing that this season and excelling. That's not the point. The point is, Ferrari, as grand as they are, as important as they are, as heritage loveliness as they are, is not a happy home for a world champion, because the organization is a mess. The strategy is a mess. The leadership is, I don't like getting at Binotto because I think he's brought the team forward, but he's an engine man. That's his thing. He's an engine man, and now the engines aren't. The engines are literally nearly killing drivers. But they're at a point where I don't know about his man management, his motivation, his organizational thing. The structure of that team needs looking at, because Cam, what we saw with Carlos Sainz this weekend,
madness, big man.
I don't think I've seen a worse display of team neglect strategy, like performance, pit wall performance, let's call it. There's been a couple of harsh things where I've thought, you lot are jokes, but that is harsh and that's their thing, innit? A top team, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, I don't think I've seen anything that shambolic as what I saw with Sainz's strategy towards the end last race yesterday. What do you think of what happened? Because you normally have a way of explaining it. Maybe I'm being too harsh. I'm looking at it with my eyes. I like to get at people. I don't see the best in people. Maybe that's a problem that I have. Cameron, tell me, am I being too harsh? Yeah. Am I being... Look, we're trying to be better on this podcast. Right? We're trying to be better people. We're trying to be inclusive to all fans. We love your team. Cameron, am I being too harsh on Ferrari, or was it an absolute shit show?
I think we do have a tendency to lean into the recency bias. And before we go into Ferrari, if I just talk to Charles, that's only the third material error that he's made thus far in 12 races, right?
That's a quarter of the races.
But that's
25%.
Three big errors. The Imola one, the Barcelona qualifying one he recovered from, and then this is the proper one that could lose in the champion. Yeah,
extrapolate that over a season. That's fair. That's nearly 6
Max
races.
And Luke, but we're blessed. Nash, you got to realize this. We're blessed with Lewis not ever making any mistakes. When he spun it round the other day in qualifying, we were like, well, what's wrong with the car? Same thing with Max. These guys don't make mistakes. And so Charles Leclerc, in stark contrast, is a bit of a contradiction in terms, right? A juxtaposition even. Similar thing with Ferrari. When you're looking at Red Bull, they don't make mistakes. They're gangsters, Nasha. They race hard and they don't make any errors. You've seen them in the pit stops, like quick things.
Yeah,
gone again. It's mad. It's mad. It's literally like clockwork out here. So by contrast, Ferrari, when they keep dropping the ball, just look like SH1T. It's bonkers. So to your point, Nash, if I circle back, I think it looks really bad because the competition, the other protagonists in the championship being Red Bull, don't make mistakes. They haven't made mistakes for long. They've been killing it. And if we're going to look at longer form, again, Nasha, what I said earlier, one mistake in isolation to the Spaces title that you talked about, forgivable. Experts make mistakes, cool. But at this stage, even if you look at Paul Ricard as a microcosm, how many mistakes? Let's count out the mistakes what they made. The grid penalty, Charles Leclerc, the unsafe release in the pits, the dodgy strategic. When are you going to bring him in? Talking to Carlos Sainz whilst he's in wheel-to-wheel battle with Checo Perez. That's about 5 already. How many fingers on hands have we got? They just keep making them. And if you extrapolate it out over the course of the season, check this out. Silverstone failing to exercise team orders. Monaco strategic nonsense again. Austria sprint race, you're allowing Carlos to fight Leclerc before Leclerc gets his teeth into Max Verstappen. What are we doing? It's nonsense. Baku, Imola, need I go on? So it's pattern of behavior here that we're talking to. And for that, it's unforgivable. They need to sort it out. Continuous development will help them out. But like I said earlier, guys and girls, unconscious incompetence it's a disease. It's a terminal disease. You first, again, Alcoholics Anonymous, You need to confess and admit to having a problem before you can solve it. And when Binotto's coming out there, we had a good performance. Science is saying exactly the same thing. We haven't been a disaster. Behave yourself, Carlos. What are you looking at, mate? It's nonsense. A disaster is exactly what Scuderia Ferrari have been. They need to sort it out. It's nonsense.
It's nonsense.
Yeah. Look, I think what's happening is, you know, the way Binotto was waving his finger at Charles, but I think Binotto grabs them before they're going to the pen and he's like,
this is what you say.
Don't you dare talk about the team. We'll discuss it internally. And so that's why Carlos Sainz is coming out and saying, oh, yeah, you know, I thought it was okay. This was the right strategy. And, you know, Charles coming out saying, you know, obviously Charles will always come out and say, look, it was my fault. I am stupid. X, Y, Z. He'll do that all the time. But
are you saying then, Nasha, that you think, because this is a theory that's running around on the boards and social media, right, that it wasn't actually Charles' fault, that potentially he's covering for a mistake, another reliability issue that the car had, and that's why he crashed?
Look, Nick,
if it wasn't his fault, then that's really sad. That's very, very sad.
Seconded.
That is extremely sad. If it's not his fault and he's covering up for an entire team, that is very sad, because the conversation now comes into question his career.
And you got people like me just going, he's got a Mercedes engine.
Yeah.
But look, we can only go by what he said. I would, if I was to take a hybrid of both theories, put them together, I would say that he didn't have all the information when he went to do that interview. And if it wasn't his fault, that interview was done before he was given the full breakdown of what. Of course, they would have gone up to. He probably would have gone. I mean, to be fair, he would have gone up to that screen and he would have checked. Let me look at the throttle. He was talking about the throttle. I think the throttle jammed at some point. You could hear it when he was in the wall. You could just you could hear it. So the throttle did jam. Whether it jammed once he went into the wall,
that's what I think happened.
And and that's why it broke. Rosberg was adamant that he should have been lifting and coasting in that corner. So for the car to get away from him is a lot. But then also Ant was saying that at that point, in terms of mechanical grip, that car was at its maximum load and capacity. And, he's gone onto a white line, maybe onto a bit of dirt. And the tyres have, at the hottest temperature they would be, have just given up. So I don't think that it wasn't his fault. But Cameron, like you said, the car's difficult to drive. Tandy, like you said, I don't think if there was even 10%, or if it wasn't wholly his fault and there maybe was something that contributed to it, I don't think he would be allowed to come out and say it. No. But also you could say that's leadership, right? You don't throw your team under the bus. And if he comes out and he's like, the fucking car just chucked me under the bus again. True. I can't believe this shit. We would say that he's not displaying good leadership mentality. So,
which circles us back to that Space's name then.
Oh, Tandy. He'll win a championship one day.
Someone asked me, who do you reckon is going to win a championship first, George Russell or Charles Leclerc?
Oh. Well, it depends.
A good question. Who asked you that?
Keenan. Toto's Wolf.
That's a very seasoned question. I like that question.
You know, I'll be honest. I'll back Charles. So Charles just needs to expedite his learning curve, right? He needs to normalize his performance and stop making these unforced errors. And that for me, from a distance, shouldn't be
too hard.
It shouldn't be that difficult. The knock on Charles Nasher is that he's just exactly what Max had last year with Lewis. That fast track, that what's the word that I'm looking for? You know, that bumper course. You know, you go and you do a 24-hour course and just download all that. That's exactly.
Like he was Neo in the Matrix.
The download. Yeah, plugged it into.
I know Kung Fu.
Yeah, show me, said Morpheus. That's exactly what Lewis said to Max Verstappen last year. And Max Verstappen all of a sudden ain't making no mistakes. He's immaculate. The one mistake that he's made was the wind in Barcelona that took him up, and even then he saved it from the bloody wall. So Charles needs a similar. He needs a quick course like Max Verstappen was privileged to have from at the hands of Sir Lewis Hamilton last year.
And look, let's not forget. I did say terrorism aside, but the terrorism last year was a sign of a man under pressure who couldn't handle it, who resorted to desperate tactics. He was enabled by the FIA. So obviously I'm happy to praise Max, but I do want to just throw some shit on his name as well at the same time. Let's keep that balance. But no, I know what you're saying for sure. Max is a bit more seasoned this year, but he's not being pushed like he was last season.
Agreed.
And I would like to see him with the same level of pressure last season. Have you learned from your mistakes? Are you going to stop the kamikaze stuff? And I don't think we've reached that pressure point yet.
I would agree with that.
Of a championship slipping away.
But exactly. Where's the pressure coming from?
Well, nowhere.
When Ferrari are fucking
not anymore.
Nowhere.
You know what I mean?
63 points
There's
away.
no pressure.
No. And this is why.
I was just going to say, Nasha, 63 points down the road is Charles Leclerc. For those mathematicians out there, if he wins every race, there's 10 races left. If he wins every race, each of the next 10 races, right? That's 7 times 10, 7 9. So it'll only then be level on points into the penultimate race. He needs to win every single one of them and assume that if Max comes second, each and everything, it's mad. It's
Next
implausible,
joke.
right? Yeah, implausible, eh?
And the thing is, the question about George and Charles is exacerbated by the teams that they drive for, right? So no matter what Charles does to become the guy, and he blossoms into a less mistakes character, is that team ever going to be able to provide him with the car to win?
But the car's there, Nasha.
The car's there, but it's unreliable.
The infrastructure and the team, it's all that other nonsense.
We don't know if that car's going to blow up next race. We don't. There's going to be engine penalties this year. He's going to have to win races. He's going to have take an engine penalty at some point. So take away that race, whatever that race is that he's going to be at the back for. That's one race he's not going to win.
It's not going to happen, is
it?